Philippe, I really appreciate the fact that you wrote a book about product placement, because I personally can't think of anything more important to the students going to college today to learn about the value of a can of Coke, the value of a tub or a tube of French's mustard. Hi, my name is Garry Hart. I am a professor and chair of the Department of Radio, TV, and Film at Cal State Fullerton. In my prior life, I was an executive in the television business for over 30 years, 11 of which I was the president of Paramount Network Television. And in that role, I came across many challenging times and issues, and some of those involved ethical considerations. Let me take you back into the beginning of this century. The story actually starts with as tragic an event as you can possibly imagine. On 9/11, one of the planes that flew into the Twin Towers carried one of our executive producers and his wife, a wonderful gentleman by the name of David Angel and his wife Lynn. And it seared into all of our memories, and for me, this was the personal relationship that I had with that event. The way the story unfolds is David was one of the original creators, along with two other gentlemen, of a show called Frasier, which went on to have a tremendously successful 11-year run. The ethical issue centered around the following. As a creator of the show, David shared in the ownership of it, and he was guaranteed an episodic fee for each television episode that he worked on. Well, after time went by, the estate's attorneys felt that Paramount, the studio which owned the show and where I worked, had an ethical obligation to pay the estate David's producing fees, which were quite substantial, for every episode of the show produced, even though obviously David was not available to render services. And for myself and my colleagues, this presented a difficult conundrum, because we had tremendous admiration for David and everything he did. But if we would have continued paying his episodic fees, in effect, we were taking money out of the pockets of other people that shared the producing duties and ownership of the show. And so what we resolved was a settlement that we felt was equitable, where we compensated the estate for more than we were legally obligated to do, but not as much as they wanted. And in retrospect, I believe we did the right thing. We felt that we were as fair as we could be, and still recognized that we had obligations to other people that continued on with the show. So that's an example of how you deal with it, or how we dealt with an ethical situation that we faced. Because it's a gray area. You know, do you let your feelings rule your decision, or do you have to bring in all the variables and measure them out? And as I said, that was the resolution that we had. We had an executive under contract, and their contract was coming up. And as head of a division, I felt the performance of this executive did not merit renewing the contract. During the contract period, the executive developed cancer, went through treatment and ultimate remission, and by the end of her contract, she was in full remission. And from my point of view, one thing had nothing to do with the other. And because I'm employed by the company to make decisions that make the company as strong as possible, I felt making a change in that position was okay and the right thing to do. This person hired an attorney and proceeded to sue the company that I worked for, arguing that the reason she was not renewed was because of her cancer. And that simply was not true. And over a number of months, this became a protracted disagreement between the studio and she and her attorney. And the outcome was the head of HR came to me and said, "We're going to settle the suit." And I said, "I don't agree, because I didn't do anything wrong and the studio didn't do anything wrong. We don't have an obligation to renew someone's contract." And they said, "The problem is it will cost us, the studio, more money to defend our side legally than it will to settle it. So we, the studio, are going to do that because it's more economical." And they did that. And the person got money. They were lawyers. I don't know how they split it up. And that person went on to work at another studio. But again, you know, so you can stand on your ethics, but sometimes, you know, other people have more control than you do. In this case, the studio said, "Yeah, you might win, but it's going to cost us more, and we're not willing to do that," which is fairly common when suits get settled in all kinds of legal issues. So those are a couple of examples that I personally went through in dealing with ethics in the workplace in the television business. And I think all of you who see this tape and read the book really want to bring the best decision-making that you can. And I used to preach to all the people that work for me, among being tough and smart and honest, be fair. And that's the way I tried to run it, and that's the way I still run my life. So with that said, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak.